Hello, I'm Paul Norgate and I work as a Chair of Examiners for Cambridge Assessment. This presentation is about assessment objectives, and as I'm speaking, PowerPoint slides will come up on the screen. You will also have the slides and the full text of the presentation available to you online afterwards. Assessment objectives are the key element in the design of a specification. They identify and set out the essential knowledge, understanding and skills that must be demonstrated in order to succeed in whatever assessment activities are prescribed by a specification. Assessment objectives determine what candidates must do to prove that they have fulfilled the requirements of the specification. The essential knowledge, skills and understanding. Assessment objectives, therefore, are very closely linked to both the scheme of assessment and the content of a specification. Decisions about any one of these three elements will affect the other two. Now, the content of a specification lays out the ground which candidates must cover in order to acquire the appropriate knowledge, skills and understanding. And some issues about content were discussed, you may remember, in Unit 2. In a very simple specification, the content and the assessment objective might actually be pretty well the same thing. So let's invent a mythical specification called Very Basic History. Our content might be as simple as know 3 kings of England. And the assessment objective could be then simply to name those 3 kings of England. However, as the design of a specification becomes rather more sophisticated than this, so that relationship between the objectives and the content becomes more complex. At what level of detail do we want to actually assess candidates' knowledge of the content? How much understanding of that content do we want? If a candidate for our very basic history gives us 3 names in response to our question, and 3 of those names are indeed kings of England, but 2 clearly are not, is that a success on the part of the candidate? How much detail do we want to assess? How much understanding of the content do we want the candidate to show? The scheme of assessment will resolve some of these issues for us by determining the ways in which the assessment objectives are going to be tested. What kinds of tests or activity must the candidate undergo, and how are these going to be organised? And again, the relationship here between the assessment objectives and the scheme of assessment is two-way. Let's go back to our original assessment objective for very basic history, to name 3 kings of England. A simple written test might be a sufficient assessment. Which of these were kings of England? Put a tick against the 3 you choose. However, if our assessment objective were to be amended only very slightly to know about 3 kings of England, then the scheme of assessment might start to look very different. Much more might now be required of our candidates than merely producing those 3 names. To produce a portfolio of 3,000 words outlining and assessing the achievements of 3 kings of England, for example, would certainly show that our candidates knew about 3 kings. But what sort of things would they know?